Good morning. Another day, another video of me sitting on my floor with my cat. Fig, get out of the frame. So today, Nikocado, I have a bone to pick with you. Who am I? I am your local bad environmentalist who has an issue with your channel and your content. Nikocado, you are never going to see this. I am fully aware. I am essentially nobody. The only person I really know who consistently watches my videos is my mom. Hi mom! Still not engaged. And Nikocado is a very big YouTuber. And yet I have an issue with him, like much of the world does right now. He's kind of a hot topic. For anyone who doesn't know, Nikocado Avocado is a mukbang YouTuber. He has come into a lot of drama in the last couple weeks, surrounding, well, various things, various like bits of drama within the mukbang community. Mukbang is the YouTube community of eating food, I guess. From compiled clips I've seen of Nikocado, his mukbang style consists of getting a lot of fast food and laying it on a platter to have this like visual abundance, which I'm sure is the attractiveness in a sense of mukbangs. I'm sure it hits like a psychological tick in humans that we like to see like an abundance of food from our foraging days, you know, that evolutionary 10,000 years just. So he has like this large platter of food, and then he like talks about things and has tea videos and while eating, and sometimes he has guests, and a lot of times he like ends up throwing the food on the wall, or like with a broom, or he ends up sitting on it, or the food ends up on him. So he is eating it, but then most of it just like ends up around, like, yeah. So that seems to be his style of mukbang, is very dramatic throwing of food around. Why do I, a self-proclaimed bad environmentalist, on this little corner of YouTube, have such an issue with Nikocado? I do not have an issue with Nikocado because he's not vegan. I do not have an issue with Nikocado because he's an extremely dramatic human. I do not have an issue with Nikocado because he eats fast food. I have an issue with Nikocado because of his food waste. Yes, Nikocado, you produce a ton of food waste, and I have an issue with it. Why? Because you are a huge YouTuber. You have a huge platform. You are a very top tier mukbanger, as it would seem. And you have a huge audience and a lot of engagement from your videos. And you promote food waste. And it makes me frustrated because food waste is such a big deal. It's a big issue globally, around the world. It's a big issue. I know. I understand the clickbait aspect. I understand dramatic videos. But Nikocado, you do not need to throw your food around. You do not need to hit it with a broom. You do not need to eat 2 bites of something and then take your other rest of your food that you bought and throw it against a wall and not eat it, and then clean it up and throw it away and do it all again the next day for another video. Because it's wasteful. And I know I sound like a boomer right now. I'm aware I sound like a huge boomer. I'm practically a 90-year-old anyway, so that's not the point. But you can't just waste food like that. You have such a huge audience, and you are choosing to show this amount of food waste. I understand it gets views, but man, like, come on. Food waste is a huge issue. Let me explain. Currently, globally, we are facing the 2 biggest food issues of all time in all of human history. On one side of the spectrum, it is obesity. On the other side of the spectrum is malnutrition. And these 2 paradox, juxtaposed, whatever fancy English word, these 2 issues are 2 different sides of the spectrum, and they are both related to food issues and the global food system being extremely flawed, and mostly food distribution issues. Obesity is the lack of healthy food, is the lack of access to healthy, nutritious, fresh food for people to consume. Malnutrition is the lack of food access in general. So what do these have to do with food waste? Well, a fun little statistic, globally the world produces 200% of the food needed for everyone to be fed on the planet. 200%. So mathematically, we have twice as much food needed for everyone to be fed. Everyone could be fed in the entire world twice over. And yet we still have issues with obesity and malnutrition. And they're prevalent issues. And they're issues that have been going on for decades. And why? Because it's a food distribution issue. We are producing enough food. We have twice as much food as we need to feed everyone on the planet. And yet people aren't getting it because there's a food distribution issue in the global food system. And that a lot of time is accounted for because of food waste. So in Canada, this is an old statistic, but it was estimated that 50% of all food produced in Canada was wasted and essentially went straight to the landfill. And 50%, so half the food of all food produced in Canada, and you know, like Canada's, like we have a lot of wheat fields, there's a lot of food being produced. Half of all that food essentially goes straight into the landfill. Let's break it down. Okay, the production, you have the farmers, agricultural people, food producers, they produce the food. They produce X amount of food. Well, in order to ship it, export it, circulate throughout Canada, wherever, there are standards that have to be met. So food grade standards. So at that stage, things get thrown out if they don't meet the standard. Or if there's an excess of people who need, if they can't distribute in time, that's where it gets thrown out. So it gets thrown out right at the farm, right at the producer's doorstep, essentially. So a large amount of food gets wasted right out of production. Then the food has to be distributed. So by plane, freight, vehicle, trains, however, the food gets distributed. And food can't keep, I mean, you know, like these vehicles, these modes of transport are adapted to keep the food fresh as long as possible, but a lot of food gets bad. So once it reaches the destination, that food gets thrown out, the food that goes bad during transport. Then at the distribution stage, so grocery stores, large food hubs, warehouses, those individual grocery stores and food distribution centers have their own standards. So if it doesn't meet the grade, if it's not how many they need, if it's not what they need, that food gets thrown out. Then moving on into the grocery store, food that is not sold, food that is not gotten out in time, food that gets past the expiry date gets thrown out into the dumpster, usually at the back of the store. Then the consumer who buys the food at the grocery store, that food ends up in people's fridges. And I know I waste a lot of food. Unintentionally, leftovers go bad, food in general goes bad, food ends up in the garbage at the consumer's houses. So all along the food supply chain, the food distribution chain, there is a ton of food waste, and that's how it happens. That is how Canada has 50% food waste out of the global food production. So it's an issue. Food waste is an issue, and it's more than Nikocado would be at the consumer side, wastage at the consumer. But obviously there is a huge chain of events that happens for food waste. And that lack of distribution, that not getting the food out there, those standards which are there for a reason, but those standards are keeping the food from going out, that is the distribution issue we're facing. And that is what essentially is resulting in the obesity and malnutrition epidemics. Of course, it's like more multifaceted than that. Obesity and malnutrition are very complex issues. They're related to economics, they're related to politics, they're related to health issues. There's so much more. These are like multi-layered issues. Of course, it's not just the food system, but it does play a huge part in it. And I believe in North America that this issue with food distribution comes from the view of abundance that our society and our culture has gone so used to having. Which relates to Nicocado's videos, how he has food set up to display abundance and have all this food presented to show that there's so much. And that's a societal thing. That's why grocery stores have piles of apples that they constantly keep stocked. You will never walk into a grocery store, or you will not often walk into a grocery store in North America and see like no food stocked, because that is like a psychological trick to getting people in. One of my teachers once told me that bananas, actually, there's a psychological trick with bananas, and I forget how many times out of 5 or whatever, but a large amount of people, if they don't see bananas in a store, it hits a psychological tick as they enter the store and they don't see bananas right up front to not go there. It's something about bananas, but so stores stock bananas for the psychological trick. And of course, because people eat them. But also, it's, this like visual abundance of certain kinds of foods is what keeps people coming to grocery stores, and it's also a marketing technique. So that is something we've gotten so used to in North American society. And it most likely started in the 1960s with something called the Green Revolution, when monoculture, so planting the same type of crop, you know, when you drive through the prairies in North America and you see like all these like wheat fields or all these canola fields or all these corn fields, that is monoculture. So it's one type of plant planted, which is faster, better for marketing, better distribution, stuff like that. So the Green Revolution in the 1960s was monoculture and GMO. Producing foods really took off, and that allowed to take care of the issue with malnutrition that was happening in North America. So people were able to be fed, and it was a good thing. The Green Revolution was essentially, it was pushed as a good thing, and it was a good thing to have food to reach people. And yet, from the 1960s on, the appearance of malnutrition and obesity, separate ends of the spectrum, separate issues, has just increased, and they've gone farther and farther away, and more people around the world, and North America especially, have experienced obesity and malnutrition since the Green Revolution. So, this abundance and producing a lot of food from the 1960s hasn't really worked. It really hasn't worked because it hasn't really done what it was supposed to do, was to feed everyone and to fix this. And it has, because we have a 200% production capacity, and yet not 100% of the people in the world are getting fed. So that's a huge issue. So yeah, it's this idea of abundance, of having this abundance and having so much food, but then not consuming it and not using it. And there are so many resources that go into food production. Like, if you've ever had a garden in your backyard or anywhere, if you tried to grow a plant in a pot, it takes forever to get one freaking carrot. It will take you 6 months to get 5 carrots out of the ground. And that only passes you for like half a day. Like, it takes so much freaking time and resources and effort just to grow food. And the wasting of it is just not a cool move. Like, you don't have to, and I understand, Nikocado, that it gets views, and that it's dramatic, and that throwing food, there's the classic North American trope of food fights and dramacy, and I'm sure there's more layers of this that I'm just now realizing, but I'm not going to get into because it'll turn rambling. But I understand why you have it in there, but you also have a huge audience. And promoting that kind of food waste is really frustrating to see. It is very frustrating to see that amount of food waste that happens, especially because of the size of your channel and the amount of influence you have. And I'm sure, I haven't looked into it, but I mean, like any great internet thing, anything that gets a lot of attention will get copycatted. So I have no doubt in my mind that there are copycats of Nikocado who are equally making very dramatic spectacles with food and producing food waste just for the views and just for the engagement. And that's an issue, is romanticizing, or not romanticizing, but just popularizing this idea of wasting food when it's not. No, we're facing a global food issue, guys. Let's not, please. And obviously, I don't want to police anyone's food, because obviously it's your food, you bought it. Who am I to tell you what to do with it? Literally no one. But that doesn't mean it's not an issue. And I know I'm gonna sound like your mother, but don't waste your food. Just eat your food. Don't waste it. Just eat it. Food's an issue, and you don't have to waste it for views. I'm sure there are other things that could get views beyond throwing a ton of food around all over the wall and yourself. And yeah, and this sounds like I'm trying to police food and how people want to consume the food that they've bought. And obviously everyone has a right. You buy the food, it's yours, if you want to throw it, you throw it. But it's just more this idea that's so present that but like maybe don't. That would be really nice. Like if you don't throw food around on the walls or with a broom and you just eat it because it's, you know, food and food powers your body and that's what it's for. It's also for like art and culture and like beauty, you know, it's also for other things, but like that would just be nice to see. But yeah, that's the issue I have with Nikocado Avocado, is the food waste. Because there are issues that are happening around the world. Wow, what a fun video that you've made it to the end to. Some 20-something giving you a lecture like your parents would about food. Yep. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. This was like probably a bit of a downer video, which most of mine are. I say that like I'm surprised. I'm not really. But thank you very much for watching, if you've made it this far. That was very kind of you to keep watching my rant. And I hope you have a really good week. Bye.